A lifetime of hard work, children laughing in the kitchen, family photos on a restaurant wall, a legacy that lives on. It all comes from the power of a conversation, like the one Tommy Hall had with First Horizon Bank about taking over his father's Charleston-based restaurant business. Now the table is set for a whole new generation. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Tommy. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
They say marketing is a madman's game. So now we turn it over to the Marketing Madmen with Trip Job and Darren Rand on Extra 106.3 FM.
Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job here with you this Saturday. And we got frequent guest host Nick Constantino of 680 The Fan and the Atlanta Braves Radio Network. I wish we were still talking about the Braves Radio Network and ongoing games, but
the wound is still a little fresh. Let's just stop this topic now. The wound is way too fresh, so let's just kill it now.
We'll go right into marketing and maybe some other wounds that people are talking about with the elections and all. But hey, I saw a great article today or this week about how businesses are looking at the economy and marketing and the uncertainty heading into 2022. And it's Forrester's B2B marketing survey, which is a fantastic one. It said that most companies, or I guess 23% of companies, were going to increase their reputation program by 10% or more next year.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. I hope that makes its way through.
Vague, but fantastic.
Yeah, but still, that people are seeing the opportunity to invest in brand, and when we say reputation, this is not bottom of the funnel. I mean, this is truly putting your brand out there, investing the money over a longer period of time.
Yeah, this is it's that arm of marketing. This is PR. This is brand message. This is community. These are all those things that you lean into. And it's easy to do that if you've done them previously. You're just marketing the things in which you've set yourself up to do. Especially if the bottom of the funnel is broken, then how do you create demand? You lean back to the things at the top where, again, what are you doing for the community? What is your local? If you're in Atlanta, for example, you should double down in Atlanta. Let people know that you're here. That's all part of that reputation management. And again, this applies the most to big companies, but don't think for a second that a small to medium-sized company does not have a brand and a reputation, because it's almost more important for those companies.
Yeah, and I think, a couple of things that come out and we tie in, and there's number one, I guess before we even do that, whatever you do around your brand, make sure it's authentic. All right. So, if you're someone, to your point, who's deep in the community, or you're about your employees or things like that, then be authentic about it. Don't try to sell something you think's hot if you really can't back it up. So
for sure. And authenticity is really hard, because if you try to be authentic, then you're not authentic. It's just unfortunately the way it works that, you have to have a very strong top-down leadership with clear values aligned to be able to be authentic. And there's a lot of disconnect from the top to the bottom to the people who are ultimately sharing the news and the people who are putting it out. That needs to be a pretty close communication line to do it the right way.
Yeah. So one of the first things it talks about here says, when times are tough, people go to places of safety, all right? So, the ones that are familiar and they can trust. And, I think short-term timing-wise, driving in here, listening, I think it's every commercial, 2 out of 3 these days right now are politics. And you've probably seen it. I know the station, look, it's a business part for you, too.
We avoid it. Luckily, to a certain extent, we get to avoid it, mostly because we have the Braves and ESPN, so there's that topic change. We're not sneaking politics onto the Braves, so there's ways to avoid it. Right. But, man, you put on Hulu, you put on a podcast. Ironically, our conservative news talk podcast, the number one advertiser is Stacey Abrams. So, when I talk about disconnect or the oddness of it, if you're listening to a conservative news podcast, your chances of voting for Stacey Abrams are pretty much the same odds as getting struck by lightning while riding a shark. Right. It's that kind of odds we're talking about. And that how much money is being spent, it's insane.
It's insane, and I would guess from their standpoint, they are looking at what 1% to 2% can they flip. And that's why they're probably spending all their money there. They know that they don't need to.
Or they set
switch.
some parameters on programmatic and have no idea where it's running.
That
could very much be it. That's what happens when that money just falls from the sky. You just kind of set some buttons and go, who knows what's going on. But anyway, we'll save that conversation for a different episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, I guess where I was going with this is I think if you look over the next 6 months, I think there's a tremendous opportunity. Again, if you've got a brand and you are authentic in the community and all, people, and it happened last election, will be so over, all the negative, all the stereotype, that you have an opportunity to stand out. And you think about end of the year, first of the year, that driving in, looking at that idea that people go to places of safety and places they want to help in the community. So think about that.
For sure. Yeah, I think that when politics ends, I think people leave before the election. I think that they get so turned off. I mean, I know we had a couple of times where we were talking to listeners, and it was like this old lady. And I'm like, what do you mean you listen to sports radio? She goes, well, I used to listen to WSB, but there was too much politics, so I listen to you guys now. Yeah. I'm like, okay. And it's just that I think people are just done with it now. But, when you talk about that place of safety, I think safety can be portrayed a lot of ways, right? You can be a point of safety because you've been around for a long time. Yep. You can be a point of safety because your messages align with other people. But ultimately, they resort to the least risk and the most comfort in times of downturn. And I think those are hard things to portray from the beginning, out of nowhere. But if you focus on that from the top down, you can really succeed, especially through a recession and down times. And usually those are the ones that do succeed. Well, the people who are just there for a quick ROI are the first ones to disappear. Because it is clear, if you're a company that's out for an ROI, it is very clear. You have greasy salespeople. When the quotes constantly change, and they quote all these prices. The customer service is bad. The people showing up are not the same people. So yes, I agree with you. And that point of safety is going to become more and more important. And reputation management is how to get there.
Yeah, well, and I think some of that, if you're out for that ROI, you're quick in, quick out. So you don't get the chance to build brand, which is really what we're talking about here. And that's where, a lot of companies, they're focused on the top of the funnel. They just want acquisition, customer acquisition.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how most of this country was built, on an ROI method. I'm just saying that right now, those will be the first to disappear. I think that's what you could say, because they don't have the strongest brands, and you're not looking for repeat customers usually. You're usually looking for that one-time customer, which it's very hard to get those in a downturn, to always get those new customers.
Yeah, no. So, a couple of things that we'll finish up with here is, so what if, the economy turns? Why should I keep going? And, a couple of points in the article say, when you cut your brand investment, you risk because you've got that lack of awareness. And we've seen some studies in the past that it doesn't happen right away. Depending on, how established your business is and your industry, anywhere from 3 to 6 months is typically where you start to see, decline in awareness, especially unaided awareness.
Which makes it harder to track too, because if you don't feel it right away, then you're always thinking, if you're an ROI-driven business, you're always thinking in the right now, right? Because you don't see it right then, you actually get worse and worse at it till when it finally kicks you. And that's something funny about advertising too. At least for us, we find clients that have advertised with us for 3 or 4 years. You almost feel for the 6 months that they're not on, they're still advertising with us, because that's how radio works. The brand is so strong and pervasive. Then 6 months in, they go, uh-oh. And then that's when we get the call. And luckily, we were in a position where we're like, uh-oh, just went up 20%. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and that's, so those first 3 months, they don't see a lot of change.
Right.
The funnel stays pretty similar. And then maybe they start to see it at that 4 or 5. The problem is, it is a curve. It doesn't bounce right back.
But then it hits the floor quickly once you get to that 6 months, which is ironic, because the hardest thing we explain to people about advertising is it takes 3 to 6 months to work. So why would you not believe that it takes 3 to 6 months to stop working? It's unbelievable how tried and true those things are, but it's still the hardest thing to explain to people, because they always want that instant gratification and that quick ROI. So it works both ways for sure.
Yeah. So here's one of the ones I think is probably one of the biggest reasons to continue your brand during the downturn, and that is customer renewal and cross-selling opportunities. All right, when business does turn a little softer, not only are people more likely to fly to safety, but they also kind of consolidate. And so to me, this is the great opportunity. If look, you may have a business and you're in certain area services, but you're not selling everything you can.
Yep.
Usually as things downturn, you have the ability, maybe it's a service crew or whatever, you're already on site.
Sure.
The ability for them to start to do more for your clients is incredibly higher during a downturn than it is when things are good.
Yeah, you also get more attention. I mean, one of the things I remember, we got so much more attention from our digital providers when COVID was going on, and that was because we were the only ones coming into the office. So they were probably just dying to talk to somebody or work with somebody, that we got so much attention at the exact right time. Well, come 21, 22, when everyone's digging out of that, then everyone's calling and asking for attention. So we just didn't get as much attention. So, I don't know if it's luck or it was just being persistent, but it works. That's how it works, is that when recession, when they lose clients or they desperately have to hold on to clients, you should get more from your service providers and from your people that you're working with.
Yeah, and you want to have that touch, because when things start turning south, whether it's advertising, they haven't heard on whatever channels they use, whether it's your general account management and customer touch.
Right.
The first businesses that go are the ones that are out of sight, out of mind.
Sure.
So even if you don't have as many of the salespeople to go out there and to have that touch, but if at least your brand is out on some mediums, if you're using your monthly statements and things to create some type of brand awareness, you've got the ability to at least stay in a customer's mind.
Sure. And again, we've had this conversation before, I think, but the bottom of the funnel is going to get more competitive because there's going to be less people looking for something, right? This is B2B, this is B2C. It doesn't matter what it is. So the smart businesses will just reinvest in top of funnel branding, reputation activities, which will pay off when the next upswing comes. It's very hard to think that way, and I get it, because it's hard with your own finances. I mean, have you ever seen the retirement savings rate in this country? I mean, we're really, really, really bad at it. We're going into recession, yet every resort is filled for holidays. Like, these things don't match. We have those same bad habits. The same thing applies to business. They want that instant gratification, and ultimately, you will succeed if you continue to some capacity to brand, and keeping all your money on cost per click or social media is not the answer in this part.
Yeah.
B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter.
No, it's a great point. I also get to think about it. Yeah, brand is your retirement savings account, and the
equity, man. It's called equity for a reason. You're putting equity into it. You have to.
Yeah, and otherwise it's your 24% now, whatever credit cards are charging. Pay now or buy now and pay through the nose later. So anyhow,
yeah, they get you with that adjustable rate, right?
Yeah,
starts at 18%, then all of a sudden you're at 32%. Oh, it's market fluctuations. Well, you're paying your debt on what it is, no matter what. So
yeah, well, interesting topic. We'll dive in a little more when we come back from the break. And you are listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back. Trip Job here with the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and Nick Constantino with 680 The Fan and the Atlanta Braves Radio Network. We were talking about this Forrester study, and one of the things we briefly hit on, and kind of want to jump into, is the fact that more businesses are thinking about investing in their brand next year, even with the potential recession. And one of the reasons is, if you go the opposite way, which a lot of businesses do during a recession, is there are risks in cutting brand investments. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to, maybe your marketing stays flat or you cut, but there's a difference between, acquisition type cost and brand investments.
Yep. And again, these are long-term impacts. You're not going to see these immediately. You may see some of them, but these are long-term impacts, which, again, once you start feeling them, it is probably too late. And you're going to have to spend more money to make up the difference than you would have had you been proactive about it.
Yeah, and so let's kind of go through them. They kind of have 5 key points here. And the first one is, you will eventually see sales declines due to the lack of awareness and, maybe the wrong brand perceptions and an increased need for credibility and trust. And, I've seen that in businesses I've either joined that, went through a period where, we had to cut back on our brand. And, what happened a lot of times, it wasn't just the customers, but these, were B2B brands. The salespeople, I'd get out there and there would be 5 and 6 different messages, The brand had become different things because they had really gotten away from brand messaging. They had gotten so into product that everything was about
it's easy to sell a product. It's hard to sell a vision.
Right. And
a vision is intangible. It's easy to sell tangible things for a lot of people. It's much harder to sell company vision. Much harder.
And so when I would go to dealers and I'd sit there and listen, I mean, there wasn't a brand message.
Yeah.
And the dealers really weren't sure. They want me to sell this new product. That was kind of the message. And so that's why there's always, I don't care whether it's good times, bad times, there's got to be a core percentage of your business that has your brand for awareness, but also for clarity of messaging and alignment.
For sure. For sure. The second one here, I'm going to make a fantasy football analogy because I think we're getting to that time where somehow everybody's injured and the people who are paying attention have decided whether they're going to make the. So, it's like when you play fantasy football, your only goal is to make the playoffs. Everything resets. And then once you're done and the playoffs are there, you're like, oh, I'm over this. I'm over it. Well, this is the same thing. Your brand doesn't make the short list anymore. So if you're not making the short list, when they pick 3 plumbers, you're not one of those 3. So you've not even made it to the consideration set. So that's one of the other things it says is that you've been forgotten or people don't understand the brand or the values in which you do, right? And again, the top 3, you might get one that squeaks in there that has good word of mouth reputation, right? But the other 2 have been marketed the right way with clear vision and concise of who they are and what they accomplish. So that is really one of the, again, and that's going to ultimately affect sales. But if you're not making the short list anymore and you're not making to be one of the 3 or 4 that they call to even get the quotes, you're going to see that very, very quickly because that's not close rate. That's not, you're not even getting leads anymore. So that's number 2 for sure.
I love it because it's funny. I'm actually on my way. I'm going to meet up with the organizer of our fantasy football league, and I played him this past week. And I think in the first 5 or 6 weeks, my record is horrible, but I've scored the 3rd or 4th highest every week. But unfortunately, I've played the highest score, the 2nd highest score, whatever, right? Well, this week, the 2 lowest scoring teams out of our, I guess we have a 10-team league, were me and the guy I was playing, who's the organizer. I won by 8 points. I couldn't have beaten anyone else. The key is, which is really where you're going, when you're thinking about your brand and the awareness and the messaging, you have to understand who you're competing with and who your customers are.
For sure.
Not everyone else.
And you're not going to win every time. That's a great fantasy football. You're not going to win every time. But if you win enough on the aggregate, you will succeed. I think, I don't know how it got there, but I think that's even a better point. And that's why, we could probably do a whole show combining fantasy football and marketing, but mental note. But no, for sure. I think, what about number 3 over here?
Yeah, so demand generation efforts produce less and require a higher investment because brand awareness has decreased. This is so cool.
This is a doozy, though. This is the truth for sure.
Yeah, there's no question that, back to your point, if you have not been getting the brand out there, there's a period of time that, people are just out of sight, out of mind. They're not going to see it. It's the old, how many emails do you have to have for someone to click on? Well, let's just say you're doing email marketing. If you haven't been doing any brand for 6 months, you're probably it's probably going to spam just because of the AI technology. First off,
for sure.
Or then it's just like I don't, I remember them, but you just kind of you click it.
Well, you're not getting the
attention.
Yeah, if you're not getting someone's attention the first 3 milliseconds, you're not getting someone's attention.
Right.
And if you're not top of mind, they have no reason to remember you. And again, this is very subliminal and subconscious. These are not conscious thoughts we're talking about. Most people's day-to-day, they have much more subconscious thoughts than they do conscious thoughts. So if you are not even made it to that consideration set, that conscious set, you are in big trouble. And it costs way more money to dig yourself out of that than it would have to be proactively going through it.
Exactly. And it's the classic, almost the exercise. If you continue to do whatever minimal weight training for the whole year, when you need to spike and peak,
for sure,
you can do it a lot quicker. But if you take months off and then try to go back and peak, that's when you pull a muscle. That's when you pull a hammy, and It's not a fun experience. All right, how about number 4?
All right, so we've been talking about pretty much lead generation and new clients. Well, what about current clients? Well, that's one of the things. Your ability to upsell current clients, cross-sell, your referrals, all those things that really, at its core, are different sorts of marketing. Those are the next ones to go. And if you can't upsell, if you're not getting referrals, if you're not getting secondary business from these people, then not only are you not generating new, but you're losing clients. And that's when you start to see the curve switch. Right now, you can probably for a good amount of time keep going upwards because you have new clients there. But once the new clients stop and you see the current clients fall off, that's when you start that downturn. And usually, unfortunately, that downturn is what makes people snap out of it and start marketing it again. But again, it's much more expensive now to dig back out of it because you just lost 6 months of equity.
Yeah, no, I see a lot of people that, they kind of wait and they say, well, okay, now that we're technically not in a recession, does that mean I should start marketing now?
We've been technically in a recession for like 6 months already. So I think we can throw that argument out the window. Yeah. And I don't think most people even know what it takes to be in a recession because it's been so botched over the. But anyway, I digress.
No, absolutely. So, okay, the last one they talk about here is that your category positioning really suffers and you're no longer viewed as a leader. And so we kind of talked about that, again, it can be alignment of messaging. It can be just the fact that out of sight, out of mind, who are you these days? And sure. I think that especially if you're, let's say you're a premium brand. I mean, here's the case where you never want to get out of sight, out of mind, and then have someone come back and put you in a different price bracket.
For sure.
Right now, I haven't been thinking about you. Are you still you don't even have to be a luxury brand, but you can be a premium brand. Do you still do you still command a price premium or
for sure?
Or now I'm comparing you with a commodity.
For sure.
And absolutely during recessions, you want to be talking about all the, going back to that trust and authenticity, why your product commands that premium.
For
and
sure.
It may be exactly that, hey, this is a safer product for your family to use.
For sure. And a great one here is automotive. And I will say right now, Buick is the one that comes to mind of just having all kinds of problems. And it is because what the heck is the brand? It used to be our old people drove, and then, and just all over the place. And the irony is they're making their best cars ever now. They're reviewed the best, but the only way they're winning is on price because they've lost that premier thing, that level that they were. So you're talking about a brand with pedigree, history, that's making well-reviewed cars that can't sell them and has to discount because they've lost that pedigree that got them where they were. And it was probably because they had inconsistent brand messaging and unclear vision of who they were. People aren't buying a Buick when they go into recession, right? You're buying the Chevy because all of a sudden you're connecting with the American value and all these things in your head. The Buick's definitely the better car and probably a better value, but they lost that messaging somewhere.
Well, and I think there's one other. And look, you never can be certain, but when you have ambassadors, I think the fact of Tiger Woods and the way he was injured driving, that did not do them any favors. That's not the whole reason, but it does impact your brand.
For sure. And if you were a strong brand, you could probably get out of that.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're a brand that was already in that crisis mode and just with it all over the place, then I think it makes it that much harder. So I think, this is a great segue because we're talking about just being a leader in your category. So thought leadership, it's a funny word, right? Yeah. I mean, it's thrown around too often these days. Again, it's not everyone's going to have a different opinion of it, but really, thought leadership is not you wake up one day and be like, I'm going to be a thought leader. It's something developed over decades and over time, and really all it means is people are following your thought and your lead on how they want to run their business, right? So if you're a car brand, Mercedes is a great example of thought leadership. Porsche is they're going to spin that company off for $30 billion. It's worth more than Volkswagen because of thought leadership, because everybody aspired to be a Porsche, right? When they made a Corvette, they're like, we want to be a Porsche. Everyone, that is thought leadership. So I think things like LinkedIn and just the social nature of everyone and the books that are being written nowadays, it's almost fake thought leadership. They are saying what people want to hear. And too many times, like LinkedIn is a great example. Look, I post all the time. This is probably going to be on LinkedIn right now. But ultimately, talking about the mental health of your employees is incredibly important. Right? Yeah. But when we are hitting into economic downturn, doing it because you feel you have to is not helping anybody. Right. And that's where I think thought leadership gets blurry. That's not real thought leadership.
Yeah, you want nuggets, all right? And you want consistent nuggets that create value. And I think the biggest thing I've seen is, for true thought leadership, it should be about the recipient, the reader, or the listener, or whatever it is, not about you. If you're doing it to promote, that's not really thought leadership. What is it that you're bringing to someone else that they can use?
For sure.
And
for sure. It's because it's hard to misinterpret that. If you're clear with that, it's hard to misinterpret it. And that's the thing about thought leadership is it could often be misinterpreted. The internet is the Wild West. The character you are, you almost create an avatar of yourself. And the character in which you are, and I was joking with somebody about this today. I was talking to two of my sales guys. And I was like, guys, you have a background to make yourself whatever you want to be. Because you know why? Most people don't give a poop about what I talk about. But when I talk about marketing around the Braves in Georgia, all of a sudden their heads pop up and perk because I'm connecting a business aspect to something that touches them personally. That is how you use thought leadership. It's not always what you think. It's how do you connect with people and something they do. And luckily, sports it brings people together. And if you can touch those heart points about sports and use it to talk about business, that's how I've been able to kind of make a foothold on LinkedIn. And everybody in this building has the opportunity to do it. Now, is that thought leadership? I think it starts out not that way, but if you do it for long enough in the right way, it becomes thought leadership. And I think that's what people have to understand. That's the other thing. If you think you're going to wake up and start being a thought leader, you're insane. It's going to take 8 months of grueling work before you even feel an ounce of success from it.
Well, as you know, I mean, I started with the LinkedIn videos back during the pandemic, and it was really it was a void at that point. As you were saying earlier, we weren't getting out, but it was twice a week.
Sure.
And then I was putting out usually might be an article someone else wrote before I started writing my own content, but did it for 2 years. I mean, I have 130 videos or something, like that. And, I think the early success was kind of there because there was that window, right? Sure. But then, the true, getting people to respond, bringing people into the dialogue. And I think that's a key part of it if you're on social media is, bringing others in the dialogue. It's not just you. How do you bring experts in to talk about, whatever it is, employee mental health or marketing in our case, or sales and marketing alignment. So,
how do all these things work together?
Yeah. And I think the more you can do that, the more you're consistent. It goes back to brand.
Yep.
Those are the things that you want to do. And guess what? You've got to be across multiple platforms. Okay, that doesn't mean everything. For sure. Where is your audience? Where are you going to hit?
For sure.
And take it from there. I mean, a lot of B2B companies, they focus on things like, let's do a white paper. But those are hard to do, and maybe we only do 2 a year. That's fine.
Yeah.
Use those, but then how do you take those in snippets, and how do you build off that?
Yeah. So quick couple recommendations. So if you are a thought leader, if you fancy yourself a thought leader, great. If you don't, just a couple of ideas of do's and don'ts, I guess I would say. The first don't is don't bash your competitors.
Yes.
Thought leaders do not come on screen and bash their competitors. One, there's a way to do it without bashing them. Two, the rising tide usually lifts all ships. And if you're bashing somebody in your category, you're going to be a detriment to the category in which of what you're selling. So I think that's the first one ultimately is do not bash. Thought leadership does not mean saying negative things about other people. The second one I got, and then I'll turn it over to you, is it's got to be a two-way conversation. I find that I learn more, people learn more, you will do better if you spark debate other than you talk down and speak directly to people. We have 2 sales meetings in this office. One of their sales meetings is kind of the stand up, tell everybody what's going on. The other one is I want you to challenge me. I'm going to win, but I want you to challenge me. So much so that we got in a fight over an algorithm versus a formula. We were all wrong, but I'm saying those are the kind of things, that's thinking out of the box, man. If you can get thought leaders and you can get people to challenge you, win or lose, I think that's real thought leadership because, everyone's going for, you should want people to come for you. The best people, imitation is the finest form of flattery, should be coming after you, and that's when you're a real thought leader.
Yeah, I mean, we all only have a certain amount of time. I'm going to spend the time with things that I can learn about, right, and show value to me. So that goes back to the audience, to the fact that, create some debate, create some interest, and utilize that because that's where I want to spend my time. I don't want to just check the box, that's funny, etc. So, and I think that, the fact that you need to have, that expertise, but you also need to be a little original, right? Sure. And it doesn't mean you have to be, crazy, creative, or whatever. It's just, be authentic, be original, and bring that out. And it's not just this cookie cutter platform that some use, or just say, hey, I see everyone else doing a video, and they got a screen behind them or whatever. Don't sell Don't sell your product necessarily behind you. Sell the fact that you're bringing something of interest, and make it about the knowledge, not about the brand and the selling.
For sure.
That's what comes in later.
And that's a pretty easy thing to see. I remember when I started doing, my LinkedIn stuff, it was always somebody who was trying to sell me something that was engaging with my posts.
Yeah.
And at some point I was like, this is not what I want this to be, because like these people have no real interest. They're just liking it because they're trying to sell me something, which, fine. It starts there.
Yeah.
I'm in a position where I can buy things. So great. But yeah, I agree with that. I think that originality is really hard, and original doesn't mean it has to be completely the most far-fetched, absurd thing in the world, but your spin on it has to be original. And maybe you're talking from a position of doing something unique. And also, don't talk about, if you're a plumber, you don't always have to talk about plumbing. There are other things you could talk about to be a thought leader, because you know what? Sometimes it's the advice you give on other things that make people want to work with you. One of the things we've stumbled upon is, in the past couple of weeks, I've helped like 3 or 4 different people with intellectual property debates, and they're signing these contracts, and I'm like, well, let me help you. And like, what do you know about intellectual property? I'm like, you know what? I didn't really know I was, but I've written 6 contracts, all of which have pretty insane intellectual property. And you know what? Intellectual property with the University of Georgia pretty much needs a Harvard Law degree to figure it out the way it's written. So that is why. And then all of a sudden now, you don't think these clients are going to renew marketing campaigns if I'm offering them legal services on IP? I mean, that's the kind of thing that is, it'll help you to be able to speak on not just your business, but how your business affects and works with other things.
Well, and you can do it with things that if you know your audience well, and again, what you want to give them is things that they value, even if it's not your services, but you know them well and you can tie it in. They have a higher level of view. So we've talked a lot about, one of my clients, it's a pond management, lake management company. And so they do fishery management.
Yep.
They do, keeping algae bloom and all that out. But we've talked about at certain times of the year to give advice on, fishing. Guess what? Pretty much most of their clients, that's why
if you're getting into pond management, for sure.
It has nothing to do with their services, but it's just, guess what? People want to get some tips about, now's the time to use, if you're looking for stripers or whatever, now's the time to use live bait versus worms or whatever. I said, every now and then, just a few of those that tie into your audience. If you know your audience well, it doesn't always have to be selling. It's information that they're going to jump on and use.
Yes, there's nothing sexy about pond management.
No.
Right? But just for some people to go out and for a day, drink a couple beers and go fishing is like the dream of their lives.
Yeah.
So do they overlap? Much more than we probably think they do. So, again, that's where I get to be a little lucky, is I lean on the sports aspect that people love.
Right.
I'm not going in there and talking about a cost per thousand. I'm talking about how this affects the Braves radio network and all these impressions coming in, all this psychographic data that I get relevant to a Braves fan. It's something people can connect to. So that's another great point, is leave that comfort zone and use things that you believe your listeners or your people or your want to be around. It's an easier way to seem more human and relate to them.
Yeah, and I tell them, and I said, look, you can run this one every year at Christmas time, but there's benefits. There's a how-tos of, should you take your live Christmas tree and put it in a lake? Is that a fish habitat? Again, those are things that users can do.
I've never had that thought in my head about putting it. I don't have a lake, but
those are
fun.
things that, again,
sure.
Look, they're not going to get the service for it, but again, it connects that here's something that can help the health of the lake or not help the health, depending on how you do it. And so they're just little things that sometimes, you can do to help build that brand and build the thought leadership. And guess what? Then the time that you want to be, again, not selling, but a little more hard hitting with why you need a certain type of service.
Sure. You've qualified yourself. You've got credibility. You've got built that equity for sure.
Yeah. So what are there, let's take a few minutes before the break and talk about some of the maybe fails you've seen recently in thought leadership and content. Because there's plenty of them out there.
There's one that just drives me crazy. I'm not going to go into I don't want to name the client because it's not a client of mine, and it's someone who I actually we turned away because I was so turned off by this. But there's a lawyer that is just, had to drop a couple $100,000 on professionally created content, putting it out there, all very self-boasting and very, like lawyers do. They love seeing themselves on Billboard. I get it. But it is just always very slow, like and it's always cut. It's never a straight shot, and you just sell how overproduced it is. Yeah. If you're not getting attention really quick, no one knows. So it just looks like this guy talking to people who don't want to hear him. No engagement, no likes, but just consistently posting. I'm talking 3 a day, getting 1 like, 1 share. And if you look even deeper, it's their own employees that are doing it and sharing it. And again, lawyer's one of those things. Your face is on a billboard. People think you're qualified to be a lawyer. Let's call it what it is. But it turns me off so much that we actually turned away the business because I didn't think it would be a positive to associate with that. So,
well, and for your other clients too. I mean, how would you like to be the person who runs after them?
I get that is the difference between B2B and B2C. Yeah. He's pulling off his intention of B2C. Yeah. You know, lawyers don't exactly target the highest standing people in society most of the times. Again, so he's accomplishing it, but he's turned himself off to the B2B people, to the smart ones at least. So it's a great point. I didn't purposely mean to make it, but the B2C and B2B should usually align. And this thought leadership really turned off. And I'm not the only person that said it. I had multiple people say the same thing. And one is because he's paying also for sponsored posts, which makes it that much worse. If you're paying and you're only getting 1 like, and man, something's broken. It's been 6 months now, so very, 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 very poor. And the other thing that just comes to head is like, how much money did mommy and daddy give this kid? Yeah. I mean, I don't see how you could run a business tricking people into working with you for the long term. Yeah,
and mine is in the last 30 seconds here. Is, look, video's great. Yes, there's a lot of videos out there. I've got a few friends who every time I see their videos on whatever platform it is, I go immediately and I see 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever. If it's more than 3, you're lost. All right. Yeah, really 1 to 2 is ideal. And I'm not always, I'm a culprit. I really target that 220. But, man, when I see a 5 to 7 minute, I don't care what it is.
Put the best 2 minutes into a video and then click over to YouTube to show the rest. Yeah. You want people to see your full video if they care, but you're not going to get anyone's attention on a 9.5 minute LinkedIn video. It just doesn't work that way.
Absolutely.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Well, it's great topics. We'll dive in a little bit more after the break. And you've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job here with Nick Constantino of 680 and the Atlanta Braves Radio Network. And we've been talking about your brand, recession, thought leadership, and we're going to wrap it up with one last article that came in this week. And it was essentially defending against consumer trade down. And, the thought most people have is, hey, people are starting to worry about the economy. I've got to worry about my pricing. I got to worry about the no-name brands, or the private brands. And if you've done all the things we're talking about, continue your brand messaging, your brand awareness and investments, it's not you against the private brands or you against the discounters. This article says it's best. It's your brand versus itself. And that's, for sure. I think that is so true. And here are a couple of the reasons why. And, you think about, the worse the economy gets or the worse maybe a crisis happens, people have emotional responses, right? And think about Starbucks, right? How many recessions have we been through? Since Starbucks really became popular 25 years ago.
Yeah, I can imagine it's hard to buy an $8 mocha frappuccino peppermint cappuccino when you're sitting in a recession. I can't imagine that to be an easy thing to palate when you're sitting in a downturn. Yeah. And I haven't even been to a Starbucks since inflation happened. I can't even imagine what some of those ventis cost right now.
Yeah, but has anyone seen the lines go down? Ever? I mean, that's the point is, you have an emotional response and there's things, when things are hard, we all want things that make us feel good. All right. And in Starbucks is, in their mind, and to me, it's crazy. I don't drink coffee to begin with, but to spend $5 or $6 on a cup of coffee, I could go do other things. But for the people who have to have their coffee, they'll give up something else for sure to have that. And so that's a case of they don't trade down. They don't lower their prices. Yeah. They don't cut the size of the Venti or the Grande or whatever because they know that it's their brand.
For sure. I think one of the things you've seen over the past, I think it was a reaction to 2008 to the last recession, was a diversity of price points. So one of the things Starbucks wins is like maybe you just switch to a coffee. Like a medium coffee is still $2.50. So like having a $2.50 and then a $10 benefits you, because realistically, how much does it cost to brew a cup of coffee? Like, we're not fools either. But at the same time, if everyone's drinking $2.50 coffee and sitting for 6 hours at a Starbucks, you're going to lose. But at least you have the price points. You know, one of the people that did a really bad job of that, I think, was Netflix. Is a great example of someone fighting against themselves, because they love the smell of their own poop and just believed all of a sudden that doesn't matter how high they go, people were going to keep spending. People were going to keep spending. And then all of a sudden, when inflation happened and they had to check where they were spending it, all of a sudden they're like, I don't need Netflix. Yeah. So now what does Netflix do? Luckily, they're in a position where they can defend and they can put a new value proposition in with a $5 advertising-based program. Right. So people can make that own decision. Are the ads worth it for you? That was a reaction, though. That wasn't being proactive. So Netflix had that consumer trade down by fighting themselves. Yes, are there more choices now? Completely. But Netflix used to be $8. It's $22 for the Ultra package now. Yeah. Those are very far cries, and the value proposition of all the content they were making did not, in consumers' minds, keep up with what they were trying to do. So that's a great example of it. That, you know, I'm curious to see where they go. Yeah. You know, I'm going to wait for the stock to bottom a little bit more before I buy it, because those are the kind of companies that don't go bye-bye. But honestly, it's a great example of you're fighting against yourself in certain situations.
Yeah, and you know, you really have to think about ways that you can tie into the emotional, understand your customers and tie into that emotional, it might be stress or emotional happiness, and that's where you want to go.
For sure.
You know, because one of the things is when we do cut back, that does create stress. You know, this article talks about restraint induces stress. So, for sure. Because we're not used to having to make those type of choices. So the ones that you really don't want to have to cut back, you're going to keep doing. Do you feel emotionally tied to that brand, that product, that service? And, you know, I can't live without it. If I'm, you know, maybe it's a cleaning service or some other type of service. You know what? I'm gonna get rid of other things.
For sure.
Right?
That emotional connection. And again, we were talking about authenticity before. It is very hard to fake that emotional connection. Yeah. And I mean, for me, you know, I'm a watch guy. I'm a watch sucker. And I look back at my eBay, and I have bought and sold hundreds of thousands of dollars, because I buy it in my head. I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be the coolest watch ever. I get it. I wear it. I'm like, yeah, I just don't have them. And then I'll buy some that are just not a Rolex or not a Zenith or not these high-end brands that I just fall in love with and I wear forever. Yeah. So, you know, at some point...
And then when someone says, hey, that's a cool watch, what does that do?
It depends. If it's somebody who's wearing a $33 Timex, it probably doesn't have the same connection as someone who's wearing a $12,000 Rolex. But anyway, again, you know, the other thing I'm going to just counter this, I think you get to a point where some people, actually smart people, take emotions out of it and it becomes accounting. And it's just doing that math. And what is the most expensive? What can I, because that is what you're going to see next. I think you run with emotion positively, especially when things are going well. But when things go bad, you become an accountant. And do you really have an emotional connection to it? And honestly, like, can you live without Netflix? Anybody who tells me no probably has drank some Kool-Aid that they shouldn't have been drinking, because you can live without Netflix. Let's be honest.
Well, and so you bring up a good point. So that gets into the brand and then promotion. All right. So when things do get tough, you know, do you start promoting, discounting, and those type of things? And I think that's the case of understanding your brand. I would say in most cases, if there's an emotional attachment, you know, you don't want to start promoting from a price standpoint. There might be a different way you can promote.
Oh, yes.
All right. You can promote, let's say you're a restaurant. It might be, you know, you want to bring people in and you offer them, you know, free garlic knots or whatever. Yeah. I think we talked about that with Rhino at one point. But little things that really don't have a cost but have a value and reason to bring you back in and not get you into this, 20% off if you order 10 or more dollars.
Now, I will say the problem there is that everybody tries to do that at the same time. And a great example is cell phone companies, right? I mean, I thought it was life-changing when all of a sudden you can get Disney Plus for free with Verizon, but the next thing you know, then AT&T's giving HBO Max and everyone. So can you give away something that someone else can't easily duplicate and be that thought leader? Do it quickly enough to make a barrier to entry, because the last thing you want to do is something that then everybody else is. Now, it benefits the consumer because everyone's getting more value, but what is it? What is your value proposition in which you have that other people don't, that provides value and doesn't make you price sensitive, is ultimately what you're trying to accomplish. So much easier said than done. But if you have those things, and that's something that you already have, you don't need to be listening to this podcast. I mean, if you already have yourself in a position where you're doing those things then you're well ahead of most people, if it's really true. Some people believe believe that they have a certain thing that's over someone else and they don't. So.
Yeah, and if you don't have that, that's where reach out to me at Rand Inc., tjob at randinc.cc, or look me up on LinkedIn as well. You can check out our thought leadership, but I just see it too many times where people think about it as a cost equation versus that value equation. Yeah. And, that's where the brand and your investments in brand just help you have that premium position. And guess what? More often than not, the deeply rooted brands are the ones that hold themselves through the downturns better than the price brands.
And from a brand standpoint, the price-sensitive people are usually the biggest pains in the butts. The value-sensitive people are the right ones, because if you are value-sensitive, hey, I might be paying 10% more, but man, they're going to show up on time. They're going to call me. They're going to do my invoice the right way. And I think that's something you age into. I think when you're young, you don't realize that, but you make that mistake once, just don't make it twice. Yeah. I mean, I remember I tried to drywall myself once, and I was like, this sucks for the cost of drywall. What am I doing?
Why did I decide to do that?
And then I tried to be an electrician and cut down said drywall with a reciprocating saw, and I went through my return line on my power and should have died. So I'm not an electrician anymore. Let's leave it at that. But there are certain things that you learn. Value is value.
Yeah. Well, glad you're here, Nick. And as always, it's enjoyable to have you on the show, and look forward to continue to have your input from time to time. So you've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Have a great week, and we'll be back next weekend.
This morning in North Carolina, wheels are spinning. Determination is winning. A passion is now a thriving business, and it shows no signs of slowing down. How? The power of a conversation, like the one Clint Spiegel had with First Horizon Bank about starting a bike wheel manufacturing facility in Asheville. Now it's not just talk, it's rubber meets road. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Clint. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
Finding your direction, a career path, can be difficult. There's so many choices. Check out Life University and explore your options at their Eagle Madness Preview Day on Saturday, March 2nd. It's your opportunity to spend the day learning about their unique undergraduate programs like culinary nutrition, biology, business administration, and more. Come discover exciting majors and talk to current students and faculty at our beautiful Marietta campus. We'd love to see you at our Eagle Madness Preview Day on March 2nd. For more details and to register, visit life.edu/join today.
Is this the year you want to grow your business? Do you want to expand your team? Build a new office? Hey, it's Tug, and I want to tell you about First Liberty Building and Loan. Aren't you exhausted by going to lenders, building a relationship, and a week later, you're dealing with a new person? You won't have to with First Liberty Building and Loan. The Frost family has been helping businesses grow since the 90s, and they can help you too. They know the patterns, they know the ebbs and flows, and they know business. Now the Frost family wants to know you. FirstLibertyGA.com. Buying a building, building a building, buying a franchise, or expanding. Reach out and spend 10 minutes with them. See if you're a fit for them and if they're a fit for you. FirstLibertyGA.com. By the way, if you're a young banker and you want to work with a team that's faith-friendly with a culture of excellence, First Liberty might be a good match. Reach out to First Liberty Building and Loan at FirstLibertyGA.com. That's FirstLibertyGA.com.